of the Lord. Amen. All right, we'll go ahead and share the verse, Psalm 19:14, just the first part of it, and then we're going to get into it in just a little bit. But today we're going to be talking about you as a character, me as a character. We're all characters in our story of life. But what we need to make sure of is that when we're talking about our character, we're going to focus on what each character says. How a character acts, we're going to talk about that maybe at another time, but what a character says, how he talks, or how that character talks, or whatever it is. And so it says here in Psalm 19:14, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable unto you, Lord. So here, what we're talking about today is, and you can see up there on the picture, you'll see that we're going to be talking about speech bubbles. We're going to talk about a character. You are a character, okay? Everybody you sit by, everybody you go to school with, everyone that is around you, watches you, knows your habits, sees what you do. And so if we were going to, as it were, create a movie, a book, a TV show, a cartoon, a comic book, a comic strip, it would be, what is your life? You are the star in your own book, your own TV show. And so when we begin to look at that, we're going to talk about, and as you've seen on the first slide as we looked at, you've seen the Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Y'all remember seeing that? We don't have to go back, but it was on there. How many have ever read any of those books on that? Okay? So what it was is a grown man that is later, he's trying to write into things that go on during junior high, things that are going on. And so when we get older, we can tell stories. Oh, you remember back in 8th grade. You remember back in 9th grade. You remember when we did this. And so we're all remembering. It may not be a movie. It may not be a book. But people around you are videoing live. Literally, in most cases, with everybody having their phone, everybody is trying to show everything that everybody does. And so, what character do you play? So when we start looking at this a little bit, I want you to think, your life, your friends are going to be in a movie. You're going to be in a book, okay? So what's this book about? It's going to be about you. These are characters, and in your book, all your friends, all the teachers, everybody will play a character, okay? Now, I want you to think for a minute before we get established into the speech part of it, that all of our words and the meditation of our heart ought to be what? Pleasing in the sight of the Lord. So, how does your character talk? How does your character walk? What is there about your character that stands out? And so when we begin that, does your character lie? And everybody knows it in your class or around you. Does your character, are there other suspicious activities? Well, in the show of your life, then that would play. And all of them will be so excited. There's a movie coming out, and it's called Me. You know, man, it's a movie about me. You want all your friends to come. Yeah, it's going to be awesome. And what if the movie only showed the bad things that you've done? Oh, you've already invited your family. You've invited your friends. And now they've seen all the bad things. Let me tell you something. When our heart gets full, whether in whatever emotion, and we'll talk about that some in just a little bit, it usually bleeds out with this mouth, okay? So, when you're emotional, what comes out of your mouth? What would your character have a filthy mouth? Would your character brag all the time about itself? Would your character always be cutting down, tearing down everybody else? Or would your character be building up people, trying to love people, trying to get them to live for God? Would your character actually have one scene where they stood up for Jesus? Or would your character always bow down to peer pressure? You see, you're living your life. Everybody around you is seeing that. And if we had that movie, man, it would be so awesome to see. Maybe not. Maybe some of us, we would come up with a title for me, you know? Maybe it's Futureless Freddy. Man, I don't know what I'm going to do when I grow up. Let me tell you something. God has a purpose for everybody here. And if you live without a future in mind, then you do and say things you probably shouldn't say, because the thing is you're preparing, and we're not going to get into that with this one today. But if we'll go to the next slide, some of our characters are going to be exaggerated a little bit. And so in 1904, the Yellow Kid was first introduced. I think we jumped some there, maybe a little bit. There we go. The first character, 1904, the Yellow Kid, was the first American comic strip character. Okay? And so you can see here that his speech balloons aren't necessarily speaking as far as a balloon or anything, but his words were on his shirt. Okay? He was called the Yellow Kid. Anybody wonder why? He had a yellow shirt on. And you know, he was a political cartoon at times, because you can see here they're poor all around New York, and people are not having meals, people are not having basic necessities, and you can see in his good English right here, it says, melt the Vatican and feed the poor. Well, you go to the Vatican, you can see that there's gold and there's riches and rubies and all this, and then people are starving. It's kind of like sometimes people picture the church today. The church has all kinds of money. The people in the church, man, they have all kinds of blessings. But they're not feeding the hungry. They're not clothing the cold. They're not helping other people. They're just getting by, okay, as it were, in here. So when you start thinking about the Yellow Kid, then you start thinking maybe about Bible characters. There are lots of movies about Bible characters. There are comic books, there's cartoons, there's movies. Man, there's all kinds of things about Bible characters. Now, let me tell you something about Bible characters and you and I. We are the same as they are. Just normal people, fishermen, tax collectors, lawyers, just normal people that are grown up, okay? And here's the story of these 12 disciples, and you can go on, you can talk about Adam and Eve, you can get into shepherds, you can get into farmers, man, you can get into just about everybody. What it is, though, these are real life characters, and they did something that stood out about them. Let's take Samson, for instance. Okay? Samson. Every time you see a cartoon character of Samson, you see this big, giant, strong man. That's not the case. Okay? But why would people go up to a big, strong man and keep asking him, where's your power come from? Comes from right here, these guns right here. That's what they would say. So, but no, he was just an average guy that God decided to use. Now, does that mean he's going to do everything right, or did he do everything right? No. See, your story, no matter what you've done in the past, your story for today, last week, yesterday, all that's last episode. You're on a new episode. It's this week.